We should be doing the thing. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, thoughts, interpretive dances, or jingles before we go?
Do-do-do, 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 be-do-do, be-do, be- 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 be-do, boo.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Do-do-do-do-boo-boo-ba-do-boo.
We should totally.
Baboon's better than weasel.
We still need to do our a cappella album. We've been threatening it for 4 years now. 3 years?
Alright.
4 years? I don't know.
Yes, unless our demands are met, we will do an a cappella.
Oh, it'd be fantastic. Stick
So
'em
back
up.
when I used to work in finance, I was in the New York office, and they wanted me to.
Oh, is that a
lead-
band?
Yeah. And they wanted
Hello,
me
my
to
baby,
lead
hello.
an introduction to a training session I was going to have to do with the London office. So the entire company's on the call, and they hand over to me, and I say, "Good evening. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jan, and unless my demands are met, I will destroy one major I'm so sorry. This is the wrong speech. I thought that was really funny. The people in New York thought that was really funny. The people in London did not think that was funny at all. And the CEO was grumpy pants. When can we have the complete RPG bundle? As soon as we can. Mikey's doing wonderful work with the Blender and the courses. The music course is done.
Yep.
The Godot course is going to take a lot longer because Godot 4 is still in alpha and is not stable yet. But the moment we get to a point where we are comfortable saying, yes, we can teach you this because it's not going to crash every 3 seconds and they're not changing every week, then we will start on it.
And that goes with the assets as well. Once Godot 4 is stable, we'll be able to actually release the assets that work fully and properly with Godot.
Right. We mentioned this earlier in the stream, but right at the beginning of last week, they released Alpha 4 and broke all textures. So I had to go through and redo them because they changed the naming. And things like that are going to keep happening. So at this point, it's not ready for production.
Of either courses for it or working in it.
But thank you. That was a good question.
Brilliant.
Any other good questions or bad ones? For those of you who weren't here at the beginning, Mikey will be away next week, so there will be no stream. He's going on vacation. Well done, Mikey.
Yeah, I booked a vacation 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
I thought I need a vacation. 2 years
And
later.
then there was this global no travel thing.
Yep.
Yep.
So
yeah, I think
cool. I'm just having a look at the. Yes, it's okay. I'm just having a look at my diary and checking on things. There'll be another break in transmission, the 11th, but we'll remind you about that closer to the time. So that's fine.
Yeah. Juan asks Vegas. Yes, thank you. That'd be lovely. When do we go? Here's a question. Did you guys do something for your infrastructure, auto builds or similar? I don't.
No, is the short answer.
We use Git internally. And every course or so, I realize I don't know how to use Git and I break everything, and Mikey has to listen to me complain. But no, we're not yet at the stage where we are big enough to be doing that kind of infrastructure investments.
No,
I think is the short answer.
Yeah. I've in terms of infrastructure, I've got inside the house, I've got a NAS. Everything's all linked together that way. Externally, that's something like that. But externally, Jan gets that to me on Drive. We did actually start to use my NAS exposed to the internet, but it turns out that the guide that I used to do that,
massive security flaw.
You don't do that anymore. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, and I'm taking the NAS offline.
Roderick, some random fun fact for us. Did you know that when Shakespeare was alive, theatre was not an art form and was in fact illegal within the walls of the City of London? It was very, very low class entertainment, not art. And if you're a respectable middle class woman who wants to go to the theatre, you wear a mask to protect your reputation.
Cool.
Miranda, is it bad practice to use a lot of singletons on Godot? Yes, use them only when you need to. Otherwise, you've got everything able to alter a variable that's in one place, and it's really hard to keep track of what's doing what. So when you start getting bugs, everything sort of spaghetti's out of control. So if you need to use a singleton or an auto load or a global, by all means do so. But if you don't need to do it, don't do it.
Yeah. Well, as soon as you said, as soon as you started describing that, I was like, that just sounds like general advice for a global,
Yeah, it's a
global
global.
anything.
Yeah, it's a variable that can be accessed by anything, which sometimes is very important and very useful, but it's very tempting to make everything a global, and that's one of the big mistakes you can make right at the beginning.
Keeping
Because
things in scope is so useful.
it just means that there's no. Well, it's not even just keeping them in scope. It's really easy to introduce bugs and not know where they're from, because everything can change everything else. So you really want to keep a single responsibility principle going. This function only does one thing. This node only does one thing. This variable is only accessible by this node unless there's a good reason why not.
Yeah, getting used to a workflow with small enough commits on different branches is hard, but well worth it. So I actually do use branching in Git. I find it's incredibly useful for prototyping ahead and then being able to reset the project back again and try different things out. So I tend to use Git more in a production for the course itself, and actually when I'm recording the course, then keeping track of code. But I do the plugin that I've written. Now that I'm doing the second pass of it, I'll often not put something into Git until the basic first pass has gone, and then I can start keeping track of the changes. Because the moment I start making those changes, that's usually when I start introducing bugs and things suddenly not working. And then you can just go, well, I've just done this thing, and then you try a load of things to try and fix it. You're like, aha, I fixed it, but I've broken several other things as well. I know what I'll do: stash the changes, revert the file, and you're back, and you can just carry on.
I use a lot of branching in Git, but I never mean to, and I never know how to undo it. Miranda, is using a singleton for trigger UI panels. So if you're using, let's say, a save file to keep track of what the options the player used last time or what level they're on, that's a great time to use a singleton. Because then that save file just changes one thing, and then if things need to get to it, they can. If that UI panel is things like, are we in full screen, and you need to keep checking that, then yes, that should be in a singleton. But if you don't need to do that, if you don't need to keep track of this information in between nodes in a way that isn't as simple as just doing a signal or making a node somewhere, then if you need to do that, use a singleton. If you don't need to do that, don't, is my answer. The more you can get into the habit of making it very easy for you to create this system with whatever system it is without resorting to a singleton, the easier your life will be over time. But there are times when a singleton is a great idea. For example, I want the game to remember that Mikey likes to play this on full screen. So next time you open on full screen. And if he changes it, just change that. So I've got my save file that's being accessed through a singleton, and that singleton just handles the save file for me.
So branches. So with Git, you can basically create an alternative timeline. So a great example, I'll also answer the undo as well, just underneath. So if I'm creating a course or anything that requires steps to follow one after the other, being able to revert back to the last thing I did when recording something is so valuable. Because if I screw up in the middle of a lecture, I can literally go, okay, stop recording, press reset, basically either stashing or deleting anything that's changed, and then carrying on. Alternatively, when it comes to branching, if I need to come off and try some stuff, if I'm not recording, as in not doing a production, then I can just merge that back into the main flow if it's actually worked without destroying the original code. Or if it comes to production, I often branch off to try prototypes or just different ideas or different ways of doing things. Going right back to earlier on when we're talking about there are many different ways of doing something, I will often, let's say I need to make a Mayan pyramid or a bridge or an archway or something like that. There's loads of different ways you could do that. You could do it in code. You could do it with a path, with an array modifier and a curve modifier. You could just place them there manually. Each have, and now you can use geometry nodes. There's so many different ways you can approach that. And in that example, I might branch out and record the individual steps I've done, and then look back at that branch later on and see the flow. This one took 5 major points, so that would be 5 lectures if I was teaching it, but this one was only 2. And because for the scope of the course, we try and keep things as succinct as possible without having to teach a load of little things to do the same thing that would take 2, I can look at those visually and say, right, we're going to go this way because that gives me another 3 lectures of budget to actually finish off that particular section. So again, I'm using Git for non-code as well as for code.
Now, and I'm using it as a way of getting Mikey to see the stuff I'm making and my students to see what the code looked like. Never learned Git. I just press the button.
We'll get to that in a moment. Yeah, squashing commits. I do that all the time. That doesn't help with me if I need those individual points, because they'll be specific and critical points. But I've squashed things as well. Like you were saying there, I did like 6 things the other day to my code, and I had 6 commits one after the other because I didn't want to accidentally break something and have to come back again. I used it as a safety net, which I suppose that's kind of what it's there for as well. And then after I'd finished that, the whole purpose of those 6 commits was to do X. I just squashed them and renamed that particular commit.
Right. Meanwhile, I think that brings us to the end of our thing, because we've gone almost half an hour over. We were worried we wouldn't have enough to talk about. We waffled. Did good. I seem to be reversed, because I'm looking away from you, but it says I'm looking towards you.
Yeah. You just flip your camera. That's what I do.
I'm not sure how that helps.
Perfect.
I used to be a professor, you know.
All
right.
At Clown College.
Actually, I did teach clowning. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We had a lovely time. Thank you for the jelly and the ice cream. Thank you, Mikey, for being so patient.
You're welcome. And we'll see you not next week, but the week after. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Present.
I'm violently shaking. I can't reach the end button. There we go.